Hey, it's Ben. Rahul and I started this podcast because we love hanging out with fellow trial lawyers and sharing ideas that can make us all better. And both of our firms also regularly collaborate with other lawyers across the countries in cases where we can add value. If you're interested in collaboration, or even if you just have a case or an idea that you want to bounce off us or brainstorm, Rahul and I are going to be hosting confidential case workshops the first Wednesday of each month. So here's how it works. If you have a case or an idea that you want to talk about or brainstorm with us, just send me an email to ben@elevate.net, ELAWVATE.net, or go online to elevate.net and submit a case workshop request. We will schedule you for a confidential 30-minute Zoom meeting where we can talk about your case to see if we can help. If you feel like there would be good value in collaborating on the case further, we can talk about that. If not, that's okay too. We enjoy helping other trial lawyers because we know someday you'd be willing to do the same for us if we needed your help. So again, if you're interested in workshopping your case with us, just send an email to ben@elevate.net or fill out a case workshop request at elevate.net. And Rahul and I will look forward to chatting with you soon. This episode of the Elevate podcast is brought to you by FileVine. FileVine has a software program called Lead Docket, which is the gold standard for managing your new case intakes and leads, your Glenn Gary leads, your Glenn Ross leads, and all of your other leads. So check them out at FileVine and manage your leads. We're also brought to you by Steno. Rahul, you guys work with Steno?
Steno is the best in court reporting services, not just in court reporting services, but even some of their technology tools. We're talking about AI a little bit on this podcast, and their transcript genius, where they can summarize and take interrogatories based on deposition transcripts, is so useful. If you haven't tried it, definitely try it.
We're brought to you by Hype Legal. Hype Legal does digital marketing, web development for trial firms. It's owned by our good friends Micah and Tyler. They recently redeveloped our firm's website, so you can check our website out. If you like it, give them a call, and they can help you out too. And finally, we're brought to you by Expert Institute. Rahul, you guys work with them, right?
We both use Expert Institute because you always need to be cutting edge in the experts that we use in our cases. Going to the repeat experts every single time is going to make you a lesser lawyer, and you always want to keep up, and the best way to do that is with Expert Institute. Welcome to the Elevate podcast. I'm Rahul Ravipudi.
I'm Ben Gideon. So Rahul, we've covered fires, we've covered riots. Now we've got tsunamis heading your way. What's going on out there? Are you safe? Are you on high ground?
On high ground, thank goodness. But you know what's unbelievable about my brother? He's been practicing medicine in Missouri for almost 30 years. Just at the beginning of this year, moved to Hawaii. And so my first phone call was to him on Kona, just making sure everything was okay. And thank goodness he's got an awesome home with killer views, but he was not in harm's way, and it sounded like the waves were not that bad heading into Hawaii, thank goodness, too. So
what is the
8.9
deal for California?
I think the waves hitting Hawaii were like 1 foot. I'm just assuming that whatever hit the shoreline here was non-existent.
Okay.
Yeah. That was the first thing this morning. I looked at the news to see, how big the waves were. They hit at 1 o'clock in the morning, but I don't think they were anything that caused any damage at all.
I'd be remiss if I didn't congratulate you on your $48 million verdict that you got about a week ago. I'm looking forward to hearing more about that, and we can set aside a full episode to get into the details, because from what little I have learned about it, it's a really fascinating story. So I don't want to give it short shrift, but congratulations.
No, looking forward to seeing you in a few days.
Yeah, likewise. Are you going to be talking about your verdict?
I don't think so.
No.
I just get to hang out with all you guys, so it's going to be great. So no pressure.
Our friend Lloyd Bell got an $18.3 million verdict just yesterday, so that was also exciting.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
On such a complicated case. So I'm so excited to hear about that too. And I know Ed was mentioning this before we went on, but these birth injury and these medical malpractice cases, I don't do any of them here in California, and it just my head explodes with how much you guys all know about medicine and intricacies of it.
Yeah, well, we should have Lloyd back on to explain it because even the paragraph long explanation he provided to me doesn't allow me to understand anything about what it was actually about. So we need to get more clarification on that. So that's a great segue. So we're thrilled to welcome Ed Kirk and Will Davis to the show today. Occasionally, we will introduce our listeners to a new product out there that's designed to help trial lawyers do a better job for their clients and in their practices. And today we're showcasing Supio, which is an AI platform that's been designed specifically for plaintiffs, trial lawyers. And I've done the demo just recently, actually. Was very impressed by it. Also had the opportunity to hear from the founder and meet some of your colleagues at a conference recently out in Oregon. And the whole company story I find interesting, and I like a company that's built around thinking about what the real needs are of the lawyers who want to use it, as opposed to a business that's developed and then like tried to shove down our throat and marketed to us by people who don't know what we're doing. So I really thought it would be nice to have you on and explain what you're up to. But before we get into that, can you just tell us a little bit about yourselves and kind of what your role are and or your utilization of the product and a little bit about your backgrounds?
I'm Will Davis. I'm a partner and a chief legal officer of Daniel Stark Injury Lawyers. We are a personal injury firm in Texas, based out of Central Texas. We have 6 offices, about 40 attorneys, 170 employees total. We've been on Supio now for 18 months or so. I really got into the Supio project about 2 years ago. We can go in more depth about kind of how that started, but yeah, we've fully adopted Supio now at this point, and it's really been a game changer for our firm and for our attorneys.
And you were one of the early adopters and somebody who was giving feedback in terms of the product development.
Yeah, that's right. Through just like a chance at another conference I was at, talking to somebody, 2 years ago AI was pretty new in the legal field. Everybody was talking about it. I originally was looking at different AI products for demand generation. Not a big deal, but I thought it would be an efficiency gain. I talked to somebody and they were like, you've got to meet this guy, Jerry. He's got an AI project. I knew nothing about Jerry, but we met and hit it off. And so Jerry and I, one of the co-founders and the CEO, we would meet once a week just to talk about not even the product, just our practice and what personal injury lawyers are looking for, what we do, how we think. We just spent a lot of time just talking about the practice. And then eventually, he was showing me stuff and then more stuff. I mean, to me, it was like I said, demand generation was the initial thing. But when I saw the interactive medical chronology and then the way that you could interact with it through the chat bot, I was like, this is the difference. This is what makes it different than other products at the time. And so it's just grown and grown and grown. And I've never seen a company that is able to move forward and progress and advance as fast as they have. Like, we feel like we as a firm can move pretty fast, but we can't keep up. I mean, there's new changes all the time, and it's just getting better.
Well, Ed Kirk, I work at Supio. I'm the head of partnerships there. In a former life, I practiced as a lawyer for 7 years. My first job was as a paralegal in a personal injury firm in London. I remember the first case, receiving an 80-year-old Jamaican lady's medical history, and several lever arch files after a slip and fall in a supermarket, and the partner telling me to go pick out a number of things, and just sitting there thinking I am uniquely unqualified for this task, and sitting there in my mind looking for that needle in a haystack. And I guess you got to start somewhere, but it did at that time kind of like made me think about how this could be done differently. But I practiced for a while, got into legal technology in 2018. I had a light bulb moment after reading Malcolm Gladwell's book Outliers, and thinking for sort of my generation, legal technology was going to have a transformational moment again, like we did in the 90s with email and word processing. It took until 2022, and now we're kind of living it, for that transformational moment to happen. But I worked in a startup in the UK, brought it to North America, sold it, and that kind of put me on the radar a little bit. And so found my way to Supio, where I joined as the sort of 12th employee 2 years ago, and now we're we're about 150, raised a bit of money, and it's been a wild and exciting ride so far.
You guys recently got a Series B round of funding, a substantial influx of additional capital. Do you want to kind of give the listeners an overview of what is Supio, kind of what is the mission of your product, and what ways can it help people who are doing a plaintiff's practice?
I'd love to have Will's example, but Will's sort of elevator pitch for Supio, because my best one comes from one of our clients, Eric Chafin in New York. He describes Supio as your legal AI team. It's your AI paralegal, organizing the records, creating a medical chronology, highlighting what missing bills or records you have, your nurse consultant coming in, pulling out the treatment timelines, the injuries, spotting any undiagnosed injuries, those hidden insights that help you sort of work up a case, and then your AI attorney helping you to refine your arguments. So that's kind of how it all comes together. And ultimately for our firms, yes, it is an efficiency, which I think, Will spotted right away. But I think as firms are getting more and more into Supio, it is also about finding the hidden value in cases. The other day I heard a firm say that they valued a case at $20,000, and attorneys may have kind of thought, I don't need to give that much of my time. It's not a high value case. Supio spotted a numbness and a tingling, and that information helped them settle for $75,000. So there's those kinds of things that firms are now seeing, Supio being that second pair of eyes to help them work up their cases more fully.
How does Supio integrate into the way you manage your firm?
Yeah, so I mean, we want all of our cases, once they get into litigation, to have a Supio set up. And so that initially would be uploading or making sure that all of the medical bills and records particularly, get uploaded. And that's kind of how it started. And it really helps you, like Ed was saying, make sense of the medical. Now, we as lawyers, we all generally know the medical and can make sense of it. But I can remember being a young lawyer, first-year lawyer, and I mean, Google was my best friend looking through medical records. I was like, "What? That's a word. What does that mean?" I'd look it up and it would make sense. But now, within this product, you can highlight a word or a phrase, and it can explain to you what that is. So it's a way, in addition to what all Ed has said, it's a way that you can learn for whether it's the attorneys or our paralegals or anybody else in the firm. But it's being used in a whole lot of ways. I mean, like Ed also mentioned, like it can identify things that maybe haven't been fully developed injury-wise. We had a case recently where the lawyer was talking to the client about their medical treatment. They were in litigation, and he had asked it, like, is there any injuries that have not been fully developed that have been complained of prior? And it pointed out that 6 months prior, the doctor had recommended that she go to see a neurologist. But he said in there, you need to wait 6 months. She forgot about that, but he was able to point that out to her, send her to a neurologist at that point, or like make sure that she was seen by a neurologist at that point, and it changed the whole, course of that case. And so I think it's a way to help make sense of the medical, help develop the medical better. But we've even taken it beyond the medical. I mean, we want to get as much information into Supio as possible. We have a system of what we call life impact review. We believe as a firm that the medical bills and the records and the medical bills, the injuries matter. You need to have damages. But the key to a lot of these cases is how the injuries and the wreck has affected the person's life. We believe everybody has a unique story. And so, in order to be able to tell great stories, we have to be able to get the story. And so, Supio makes sure that we're not missing anything in the story. I believe that, so you can be talking to a client, they could tell you one little piece of information that may not seem important. It may not even normally have made a note that you would make. But if Supio can pick up on those little things, it may be able to fill the gaps in on cases and it may be the one key piece of information. So it helps with a lot of medical. I mean, that was the initial thing. You can interact with it like it's a medical provider. You can ask it obviously about untreated injuries. You can ask it really anything about the medical, to explain it, to give you more information, to what is that going to look like for them in the future, at least to give you an idea on where you need to go to develop that. I think the next step in litigation, what we've seen is starting to integrate into any documents in a case. And so whether we're talking about discovery, deposition transcripts, any correspondence, motions, you can put all of that in there as well. It's helping lawyers at our firm and other firms I know as well, being able to answer discovery. One of the things at our firm that would, it took a long time and it was hard relatively for a paralegal was doing expert designations. We'd have to go through the medical records and find every single doctor that was mentioned even one time. Well, now we can use Supio to go through, and it takes 30 seconds to find all of those providers, make a list, and be able to put that in a format that we can send to the defense. And it takes seconds to be able to do that. And so it can also, all the things that Ed mentioned about what it does, I think it's all of those things. I think it is a little bit of an attorney, but I would always caution that it's like a first-year associate. I think you need to look at it like that. Like you would ask an associate to do something, you'd explain to them how to do it, and then you would verify whatever outputs. But it's a great start to be able to not have a blank page. You can always get started. And so we're using it to help clients get ready for depositions. We're using it in mediations to be able to have all of the information right there. And we've even got lawyers that have their Supio up on the table during trial because you've got access to everything in the file. And one thing I want to point out too that I think is super important is that there's a lot of fear among AI that there's going to be hallucinations or it's going to make things up. The one thing that's great about Supio is that everything that it tells you, every output has a source, and you click on the link and it takes you to the source document where it got that. Not only the document, but it highlights where it got the answer from. So you always are able to verify on the spot to make sure it actually is what it says it is. So I think that's really important as well.
What I would add on, double click on a few things that Will said. Will, you were sort of talking about those aspects to what a client tells you perhaps about their life that adds to the narrative, adds to, the story that you're wanting to, you're wanting to create. I was talking to a firm the other week. They've received a case perhaps a week prior from another law firm they were trying to read in, and we put it into Supio and we were running through it together. And I asked, what is this person's education and work history? And what it pulled up was that the person was the valedictorian. They did improv classes, and in their adult life, they still did improv. Then comes the accident, and now they have PTSD, and now they don't leave the house. And that kind of element, the lawyer on the call was like, I didn't know they did improv. I didn't know that about. She was like, Supio has just told me more about the case than we spent a week reading in. Told me that little nugget there is actually going to be something that's really going to help me bring life to the story here. I think those are the things that perhaps Will's firms is seeing more and more, and sort of knows that these things will happen all the time. But that's kind of for our firms, that's the journey that they go on as they explore this technology, because it's brand new, for people who are jumping in here. They hear a lot about AI, and maybe for some people they're switching off now because they've heard so much hype. But for us, talking about those stories, those are the things that resonate. And fortunately, plaintiff lawyers, we're not beholden to the billable hour. We're here to push our cases along and get justice and worthy settlement for our clients as quickly as we can, so they can move on with their life. And so technology like this is really resonating now in the market.
For folks who are trying to navigate the world of AI with all the different platforms and options out there, probably many people are familiar with ChatGPT or Perplexity or Claude AI or one of the kind of general AIs out there. And then there's, I think most case management software now offers an AI adjunct. Microsoft has AI. Thomson Reuters has AI. Many of the deposition, like transcript companies, offer AI. There's an AI adjunct to Zoom. Where does Supio fit into the puzzle pieces of the different AI platforms, and what makes it superior to others in its space? And are there others that, Will, you use in your business as well together with Supio, or does it cover the waterfront for all your AI needs?
It is a great question. I mean, I think with Supio, going into this, one of the biggest things to me was that, we're talking about medical information and private attorney-client privileged information. And so I wanted to be 100% confident that it was safe and secure, HIPAA compliant, because this is very, very vulnerable information that we're talking about. And so that was one thing that I made a big deal about with Supio at the beginning. And I think all lawyers do. And so, they've got their HIPAA compliant, they've got certifications on that. And it's, I can go into more detail, but all of the information is extremely secure, which makes me feel good when we're talking about this. We in our firm use some of the general tools, but, we have to have, we've had to put an AI policy and procedure in place where you're not allowed, we can't have any of our team using those general tools for any case specific information, any proprietary firm information. And so we've had to stay in front of this because it's happening so fast. We do use some other AI things. I think we use an AI transcript, court reporting company these days. That's a new thing. Our attorneys are using that and finding a lot of value in that these days. Our use of AI these days, I would say, is tactical. I don't think it's something that any firm right now is ready to use on an enterprise level. But it's just finding these particular spots where it can be tactical use to be able to get the most out of it. I think that's about all of the AI that we're using because we're trying to be careful. It can be a lot to maintain and to learn, and just Supio has been a lot for our lawyers. You've in any firm, you're going to have lawyers that are going to be more likely to adopt it earlier on, that are more technologically advanced. You've got some lawyers that are very old school and they don't believe that any technology is going to help them. And so it's been, for us, it was, finding the people that are going to be the most likely to adopt the technology and be able to, sell them on it, which that wasn't hard if they were already into it, and then be able to leverage their, position in the firm and their influence to be able to get the other attorneys on board. I think, with our firm, it was a little bit hard sell for me. Like I saw the value whenever I saw, for me, initially, it was, like I said, the interactive medical chronology and the ability to chat with it. So essentially you're chatting with Chat GPT, but with the confidence that all of the information is going to be secure. It's not going to push anything out. So, we had a situation where we had a partner of the firm, of extremely influential lawyer within our firm. He had to cover a depo for an attorney that couldn't do that depo. And he had like 3 days to do it. And so this was early on in me working with Supio. And so I was like, this would be a perfect opportunity to try to sell this to him. So I set up the case in Supio. I sent him his login and his password. And I was like, you need to use this in the mediation, because there was very complex medical case. There was no way he was going to be able to fully know the medical in 2 or 3 days. So he did. He started using it in the mediation and called me in the middle. And he was like, this is freaking incredible. Like, I didn't know this was possible. He was able to, even in the detail of that case, even if he would have looked at the medical, I mean, the defense was arguing that there was 2 separate and distinct injuries in the client. One of them was hip injury and one of them was a back injury, but they sound different. But when he got into Supio and asked it, like, how far apart are these injuries? It was within millimeters of each other. And so they were able to determine, while they were 2 different injuries, they were so close it had to be related. The case didn't settle that day, but we were in a much better negotiating position. And so he was bought in that day. And so that was kind of the beginning. And then finding the right people to test it and to use it, and then to kind of trickle down with the rest of our attorneys in a tactical way, I think has been very successful. But we are trying to keep our adoption of AI, and just really vet those things and make sure it's for a very specific tactical use, because I don't want to overwhelm our team with a bunch of different tools, because I think it's easier to keep it simple and to find the things that have the best return.
If I follow up on your question as well, just I guess from my perspective, looking out into the market and speaking to lawyers all the time and kind of seeing how it evolves too. I think in 2023, our eyes all open to the opportunities of our AI, and everybody was slapping it on their systems. As you said, everybody felt like they needed to put it somewhere in the system. The practice management needed to have it. So there was a big rush. I think in 2025, there's been a lot more clarity about the use cases. And I think people are more educated. People have seen some stuff, they're no longer just wowed by text streaming on the page. You need to have some substance behind that. And that's where, you have companies like ours, which is a domain specific AI. So what I mean by that is we are purpose built for plaintiff injury law. And behind the curtain of using an AI assistant to search against your case is a knowledge of these complex documents, of these complex personal injury documents, medical records, medical bills, so that we understand your case at a much more granular and insightful, accurate level. That's the difference now of using the right AI tool for the task. And Ben, you mentioned, ChatGPT. I use it regularly in my day. It's a beautiful general GPT to help with refining emails, choosing the top 5 things to do in Barcelona if you have 24 hours. It's going to give you the exact answer rather than going to Google and it giving you a billion. It's going to say, this is the itinerary. From 9 a.m. you start here, so it takes us to that answer, which is so, in our age of, we want that instant gratification. It's so captivating, that instant answer. And that's why, in many ways, I think speaking to lawyers, they're so often surprised that we're still hearing fake case stories. I certainly was for a minute. I think, well, ChatGPT is just so amazing in the way it's so quick. You would expect people to have learned by now, but I think just that ease is what we've become used to. One click, Amazon buys and things like that. That's what we've become used to. And I think, Will, you really touched on, the moment that law firms are in right now, because, having the tools for your team that are suited for the task, and not only suited, but also have the security protocols in place, is so important. And that education, that's what firms are grappling with, that education around safe use. And also, here's the tool for the task. But in this age of remote work, it's so difficult to stay on top of that, particularly as it evolves.
You hit on it, Ed. A couple of questions. When you were talking about Supio and how it actually understands medical records and it's got that intelligence to it, I still don't fully understand AI, and I want to. I'm very, very, very interested. How does your AI work? How does it actually understand the records and provide a value add relative to anything else out there?
Yeah. So we have something called document intelligence, our own kind of processing that happens behind the technology layer. So, Will and his team see the user interface, very intuitive and easy to use. Behind that, Supio is actually data sort of analysis company. That's the secret sauce. That's why, venture capital companies get excited about what we're doing, because really our moat is around the understanding of Epic records or Kaiser records or understanding flow sheets. So that's where we kind of set ourselves apart from this market of AI companies, sprouting out of people's, parents' basements. That nuance and understanding, but what I mean about that is understanding the schema of those records. So we have a process called annotation, where we're pointing the AI to the visit date, the right date to capture there. And that's where we're getting our data extraction at a high level, as we're giving it a set of instructions. Say, that's a Epic record. You know what to do. You know how to view that now. And that's where we can also sort of add efficiency into the process. But the challenge is that, and you guys know way more than I, is that medical records and medical bills, the analysis and reconciliation of them, not just what was the billed amount, but the adjustment, who paid what are the specials, what's the balance, do these liens apply? These things are complicated for humans to do at scale and at speed, and that's where we can come in to build technology that understands those complicated records around it.
So do you have the lawyers and law firms, when they interrogate through Supio the medical records, does that help train the model, or is it a model, or is it already pre-built by folks within Supio that this is an Epic record, here's where you need to look, and then everybody benefits from that? How does it improve?
Exactly. Yeah. So that's the human element of the annotation, that understanding. And in terms of, you have the the sort of ChatGPT like experience where you're chatting against a case. But before we get there, we've got several layers of processing that happens within those records. The text recognition software, the flagging of handwriting so that can be transcribed. Those layers ultimately get to the space where we have a data layer that helps us to produce the highly filterable medical chronology that Will and his team use, so they can filter by the injury or by the event, by the provider facility. And that data layer as well is what we use to be able to draft documents for our firms too. So it's really critical that's the jumping off point. And so that's where we put a lot of investment. And as you point out, constant evolution, because there's still a lot more for us to conquer in understanding and getting that accuracy level to where trial lawyers such as yourselves need it to be.
Take your playbook to the next level by joining a legal network of all-stars at psrplaybook.com. PSRplaybook.com is a free digital legal library created exclusively for plaintiff lawyers by the nationally recognized personal injury law firm of Rahul Ravipudi LLP, and features video content showcasing the tactics, strategies, and concepts implemented by some of the industry's most successful trial attorneys. PSRplaybook.com promotes learning, shared knowledge, collaboration, and best practices. Get in the game and see for yourself by joining our national network of plaintiff lawyers. Subscribe now at psrplaybook.com and learn from the best.
I will say, when I did the demo, one of the most impressive things that it did was create the schedule of medical bills, which I know for years has been the bane of the existence of paralegals. It can take hours or days to do that, and this can do it in seconds. And not only that, but it identifies areas where there's a record but no bill, so that you need to go out and get that bill, or maybe there's a bill and no record, so you need to go out and get the record. And again, that was a many-hour paralegal task in the past. I do worry about what the paralegal job security will be like with this going forward, but it really, that was one area that was an obvious efficiency gain. And to your point, Ed, I mean, I will, in full disclosure, say that before I knew about Supio, we made the mistake of signing a contract on the Thomson Reuters product co-counsel, which is a terrible product. And I'm happy to say that on air, because we tried to get it rescinded and they were very difficult to deal with, and told us, even though we had only had it a week, that they were going to hold us to it for a year. When you ask it to do a medical chronology, it doesn't distinguish between what's important in the record and anything else. So you get a chronology that just says, well, your client went to the doctor on such and such a date, but doesn't have the diagnosis or the presenting signs and symptoms. And what you don't understand is that even the simple things we think are easy for a lawyer that knows about this, to identify the treatment date, the date of treatment, there's like 6 different dates on a medical record, right? You've got the date of service, you've got the date it might have been signed, which might be a different date entirely. You might have the date that it was printed for production purposes. So just having an AI know what is the date to use on the chronology is not any small task. And I think Supio has solved a lot of those problems, which just makes it far more functional to do the kind of basic tasks that you need done than others that haven't given attention to any of those details. I was impressed. I think it's important to get kind of the foundational elements first, which you guys seem to have focused on before you move to more complex applications of it.
Yeah, well, I think that's the thesis from the beginning, and it's important to have your thesis right. I mean, you can obviously pivot and evolve, and that's important too. But the thesis at the beginning was the importance of creating that accurate data from complex records. And as you say, general AI will struggle to capture the nuances. So that was the thesis right from the outset. And that's, as I say, our sort of moat. And as the kind of wild west that we live in right now in this AI landscape kind of clears, and we kind of have a clearer picture of, what actually is a good product versus what is just a sort of general sort of service tool, the accuracy will win out. That's what people will ultimately fall back on, because, there may be 50,000 lawyers in the States, but ultimately this community is a small community. It can be very small, and you all talk to one another and tell each other. And actually, I know with you guys having listened to the podcast, you kind of, as you gave it a moment ago, you tell it like it is, because that's what you want to do. You want to help people kind of not make the same mistakes. And Ben, you touched on something I wanted to ask Will about, because you touched on maybe your fear of, job security around paralegals. And I guess from my perspective, looking into the profession, I see firms struggling with hiring, or turnover. I've heard people say they're struggling to hire paralegals because these days people who would have become a careerist paralegal take the bar, and they go in that direction these days now. Or I've heard from people in, Arkansas say, Ed, it's not even about finding somebody with experience. It's about finding somebody, a warm body to kind of help us bridge the gap. And I think, yes, I've certainly, one of the best testimonials I've heard about Supio was, we do more work with the same amount of people, but our people are happier. Like, I think what I feel for, what I hope people will see is that people get elevated. It's not about the grind. It's about sitting on top of that and elevating their skill set, or utilizing that elevated skill set to look in at a bill ledger and kind of use their human eye to scan it and pull out what shouldn't be in there, or have that conversation with a client to get to know them deeper. I think the roles will evolve, but I think there'll still be plenty roles to do it.
Absolutely. No, you hit the nail on the head, I believe. I mean, we've probably talked about it before, but I think with our firm, we are getting more efficient, but like not at a point where we're losing having to, downsize people-wise at all. I think what it's doing is it's allowing people to work on higher level things than having to, put a demand package together, or go through and do a medical review, or looking for one thing, answering discovery. And you mentioned it at the end there. One of the big things to us is like this frees up more time for our attorneys and our paralegals to be able to talk to our clients. We've got to be able to develop a relationship with them, to be able to get their story, and just really provide incredible service to them. And so I think this is freeing us up to be able to do those things and higher level things. And so I think the statement of people being, you're doing more work, but everybody's happier because they're doing harder things. They're doing higher level things that make them feel more productive. And I think you're really helping to build more value to our cases and, providing better service to our clients.
What about when, this is more of a big picture question, because I've been thinking about the impact of AI on the long term. And I think some article came out, I think MIT did a research study on whether AI improves intelligence or hurts it, which is so interesting. And they're talking about, I think, kids, and if kids are using AI, and, is their brain even being stimulated? But just using the example of paralegals and what Ed and Will were just talking about, what happens if all of this stuff gets fully integrated? Let's go 5 years into the future. You got a brand new paralegal, never did the medical record review or summarization before. They upload everything into Supio. Supio tells them, here's what the information is. And they've never really looked at medical records before, so they don't know what they're even supposed to be looking at to make sure that it's accurate or not. Just curious, in the AI world, is there sort of on that 5-year, 10-year horizon, any view on whether all of these, benefits and tools all of a sudden become crutches and people are non-functional without it?
Yeah, I think what you'll see is another great question. I think what you'll see is that there'll be more coaching. I mean, even I think this year you'll see more persona-based coaching going in within the platform. Like, and if people have used ChatGPT, it's got really good at kind of directing you and giving you some gaps in your thought process if you turn it into a coach. And the same, our firms will see in Supio. It will have sort of persona based kind of thought processes. So when you have a new user, you'll sort of designate whether they're a paralegal, attorney, or managing attorney, that type of thing. And then it will give them a bit of guidance to help insert any kind of insights that they may not have thought about. I think it's also something for the law firms to grapple with, thinking about how they train in this new reality. It's kind of going in another direction slightly, but when I meet people of perhaps an older generation who look at this technology with a mouth agape, sort of like things have changed, what I say to them is I try to give them some encouragement. I say, you've actually, once upon a time went to a library and pulled out a book and learned that way. And I think that way of learning is the 10,000 hours to get to where you are today. And in many ways, I think, we were lucky to have to go through that grind to get to where we are now. But what that means is that your experience plus a little prompting, understanding, a little AI knowledge will make you incredibly powerful to your firm, because you'll be able to use that knowledge to contextualize and understand what you're reading. Kind of thinking the other way to your question, Rahul, perhaps Will can sort of give the viewpoint at the sort of firm level, but that's the way I kind of see it as we move forward, is that firms will get more coaching built into their platforms to help them take those next steps in the process, so that it's less that they have to rely on humans in the office to mentor them. But I'm curious what Will thinks sort of in the current sort of state.
No, I think it's a great question. To me, reading medical records and making sense of them, it is a skill because they're all different. But I think at the end of the day, the goal is to be able to understand the client's story, the client's medical history, the client's medical story. And if this is a way to be able to get that more complete and faster, I don't know that reading the entirety of the medical records is a necessary thing moving forward. Now, I think, like I said, with Supio, is that you can look at the relevant pages of the medical records, and it can also find things that may be an issue for you as well. I think when I look at medical records, or in the past I did, if somebody went to the hospital and was admitted for 4 days, you're going to have hundreds of pages of records with a small percentage of those actually having relevant information on them. So it would just take forever to go through, and it was just pages of information, but most of it wasn't relevant to the case. And so I think, maybe we get to the point where we don't have to review all of the medical records, but I still think you need to be able to rely. You're going to need to look at certain pages, strategically look at certain pages of the medical records and read it yourself. But I think as a whole, taking it away is probably not likely. You're not going to take it all away, but you're just going to make it more strategic. I think it's a really fascinating question, though. As having small or younger children myself, what's the future going to look like for them? You can go ask ChatGPT, and it's going to give you the answer. I've seen some stuff lately that there's some ChatGPTs for schools that's built in where it won't give you the answer, but it will work you to getting to the answer, which I think is incredible. And I think everybody, we're kind of at this point in time where I think everybody needs to start learning something about AI. It's just interacting with it and kind of figuring out what it can do, because it's here and it's only going to get more. And so I think even on that level, like I'm working with my kids, showing them kind of what it can do, just getting them exposed to it, because when they graduate and they go to college, or they don't go to college, they're going to have to use this technology or they're going to be behind. So it's a fascinating time with AI. I think that it's, we don't want to become too reliant on it at this point, but I think it's here. And so we need to, take advantage and learn it as much as we possibly can right now.
Totally agree. I have one more question on a big picture scale, because you guys are way more in tune with AI and the different services out there. I think every trial lawyer across the country has experienced this. Somebody cold calls them and says, I've got a new AI product. What are 2 or 5 questions that should be asked to smoke out whether it's a bunch of crap or it actually might potentially have benefits?
I would just chat GPT it.
Yeah. Well, that's, you know what? We get a lot of inbounds now from people going to ask ChatGPT, what's the best, medical chronology AI out there, which is interesting. But actually, our marketing team told us, it's picking up our articles. We're talking about this stuff. And your question, Raul, about how do you smoke them out? I guess the things that are most top of mind are the sort of background security. Are you HIPAA compliant? SOC 2 Type 2 certified? Those types of things, as the data, residing in the US, those types of things, obviously need to be worried about. But then tell me about how the question you asked me earlier, Rahul, like, how does it actually work? Like, think of me like a sixth grade student, explain it that way, if you will. But take me through how your service will accurately create for me my medical chronology, and accurately how your AI assistant will find the nuances in my complex catastrophic cases for me. And you kind of put them on their heels and see how they go, whether they can sink or swim.
I just GPT'd what's the best AI for plaintiffs lawyers. I will tell you, Supio was in the top 2. So that's pretty good.
My marketing team will be happy to hear it.
No, I think the security is the number one spot. I mean, if they don't know what HIPAA is or can't explain to you how it is secure, like that would be a huge concern. I think, I get emails all the time from different vendors, and some of them have you can just tell from the email, they have no knowledge of our industry. They're trying to bring AI over from another industry and in a very niche situation. I think that's what we're seeing from a lot of them. They're coming in with very specific uses. And so, I think what Ed said, I think you need it. I don't vet every single one, or hardly any at this point anymore, because I feel like we've got a really comprehensive solution for a lot of the things that are coming out. But if there's something that's interesting, I'll meet with them. I want to hear, I like to stay abreast of what kind of what the field looks like these days, technology wise. Yeah, they have to be able to make it simple and explain how we're going to use it and how they're going to train on it and like what the ultimate goal for it is. I think there's a lot of people that are trying to grab a spot in AI and legal. And I think, you have to be a little bit cautious right now, but because there's a lot of people in the field, and so they got to understand what they're doing. And I think they have to really be well thought out about how you're going to use it and how you're going to integrate that into your firm, because I think we can over AI our firms these days, and that would do more harm, I think, than good probably right now. So we need to kind of take it easy.
Yeah, I think the strategy point, as you say, Will, is a really key point. Having an AI strategy and having that executive sponsorship right from the top to let everybody know this is the direction that we're going in. I think where law firms sometimes fail is they don't have that leadership of the new technology implementation there, and that's where it can fall down, kind of letting everybody else know this is the sort of strategic step we're taking. The other thing is grill your vendor about their roadmap, because we're in a shifting space right now, and you want to know that the firm that you're attaching your cart to is gonna be the right partner for now, but also in the future. And how does that roadmap align with what you want to do? And I think maybe it was you, Ben, earlier at the beginning, you kind of talked about how technology firms sometimes just sort of create things for the sizzle, for the next sale. Something that we're keenly focused on is going out to our customers and saying, do you care about this? Do you care about this little feature? Yes or no? And that's like the product direction, because I think there's what people are finding is, and you found, Ben, is that you can try something and then immediately have buyer's remorse in this landscape. It looked cool on the demo and the promise was there, but in reality, are we going to really use this day to day?
Yeah, and I think another thing to add that I thought of is like, there's a lot of these companies that, their product is all AI. There's no human intervention involved at all. There's some that have a lot of too much human intervention involved. I think that the ones that are all AI is a little bit scary to me, because they will tell you that they've got a higher error rate than one that has a human involved, but they're trading off for speed. I think speed's important. In our industry, we don't have room for errors. And so I think the more confident that we can be, if there's a little bit of human involvement, even if it's just to help train initially and to get it to speed, I think is very important. Because if something's 100% AI at this point and they're telling you it's going to have a little bit higher error rate, or maybe they're just saying their success rate's a little lower, whatever it is, that's a concern for me. And I think, where we're going with the AI space, I think a lot of these companies now are very specific. I think where we're going to end up in the future is that there's companies that are able to do it all or most of it. I think Supio is one of those companies. And so I think at some point it comes down to the people, the team that you're dealing with. I think one thing we talked about at the beginning is the way that Supio is, they know our industry, they know the people in the industry, they understand it, and they've been great to work with so far. And so I think at some point you're going to have to choose not only the product, but the people behind the product. And so I think that's also important to really get to know who you're working with.
Why don't we wrap up with this? Can you guys tell us what's on the horizon? What are you guys working on to roll out next that folks can look forward to as another technology gain?
Well, we're really focused on sort of litigation tools, having the ability to do same day transcriptions from audio from perhaps your deposition. It won't be the official, but having that built in so that you can interact with it right away. One of our big success stories last year was a wrongful death case where the trial team were loading up the trial transcripts in real time and then answering direct motions. They answered 7 of them in trial, won all of them on the way to a $24 million verdict. So those types of individual use cases there, are really powerful. So that type of thing, having the ability to surface contradictions in the records, have them just at eye level, there they are right there. So just bringing up those levels of insights to our firms while also getting really close into our mass tort side, medical malpractice side, surfacing flow sheet data, working with our big mass tort firms on their big cases, working them through.
One thing that Ed mentioned there about the depositions, our lawyers have really been taking that a step forward lately. I think you guys were talking about this on a prior episode, but what they're doing now is they're taking, if they have an expert deposition coming up, they're taking the expert report and all the literature involved in their report, and they're uploading it into Supio. Being a larger firm, we've got access to prior depositions from these experts as well, so we can put those in there, or whatever, however we can get them from other firms. And so that's helping the lawyers prepare for the depos by, it can help them kind of run through their outline of the questions and their objectives. You can also have it going, during the depo, if you want to ask them questions before you rest, and you can ask them more about that. But they're finding inconsistencies of the expert with their report or with the literature that they're citing that doesn't actually say what they say it says. We found situations where an expert is part of an organization and they make a stance on a point, but we find out through that their organization has an opposite stance on it. And so it's been extremely helpful, dealing with experts, particularly right now, and depositions. And so they're using it a lot for that. That's been really exciting, getting people on board with those kind of things, with those new uses of Supio as we kind of roll them out.
Just final, I guess the one thing at the moment we're adding in is helping our firms respond to interrogatories and requests for production. So that kind of thing, many lawyers say that bane of their existence. So that's actually something that firms are using in Supio today that I think perhaps a few of your listeners might be particularly excited to learn.
And can you just explain how the pricing works?
We predominantly go on sort of consumption around the case. So projecting how many cases a firm sees they'll use us for, in a year's period. We keep it to a year. Some firms try and tie you to longer contracts, but we keep it to a year. And then we give you that individual case cost as a receipt. So if you want to recover full or partial, you can, and you have that kind of audit trail of, here's the medical chronology output that was created as part of the service.
So it ends up, you can call it a case cost for individual cases. And if folks want to learn more about this, they want to have a demo of the product, how do they find you guys?
They reach out to me. It's quite simple, ed@supio.com, or, our website, supio.com, supio.com, and you'll find us there. There's lots of other materials on our website as well. There's an legal AI academy, the first of its kind. If you want to just do a demo first of the system, you can go to our website there and do it on your own there too.
Well, guys, thanks so much for coming on. You're going to hear from me again once our other contract comes to an end. I can assure you, excited for that moment to arrive. And thanks for coming on and sharing this
Yeah.
great product
Thanks so
with us.
much.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure.